Hello and welcome to the NBA Outlet presented by OTGBasketball.com. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory, Waldron, and two special guests, two young rising stars in the NBA media landscape, and that's Dylan Jackson, Jorge Cantu, both of OTG. What is up, fellas? How's everyone doing today?
I'm doing great. And once again, just a pleasure to be back with all the thoughts from OTG Basketball.
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's nice to be on a podcast again. Haven't been on the NBA Outlet in a while, so it's nice to be back. The Rookie Report is doing good. We just released a podcast last week. So how are you doing, Nick?
I'm excellent as always. Kory, how are you?
I'm glad. I think the last time we had this squad in house, things got a little heated. So
we definitely had some good discussions. You want to go find that show? It's on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube. But today we are talking Utah Jazz. And before we talk about next season, we're going to look back at last year. 48-34, 37-19 when Rudy Gobert was healthy. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell, amazing rookie season. They ended up losing in the second round to the Houston Rockets in 5. But what were your thoughts on the Jazz last year, Jorge?
Well, I just have a couple of quick thoughts I want to point out. First, Quinn Snyder is a genius coach. I think maybe just as much as Brad Stevens, people started to notice how good of a coach he is. We saw, that their defense, it was great, offense better than expected, so he's great. As you mentioned, Rudy Gobert was pretty much vital for the Jazz, for their defense. And they really can't afford to lose him to another injury anymore. As you also said, Donovan Mitchell, perhaps one of the best rookie scorers in recent memory. And the last thing I want to point out is the Jazz are a genuine threat in the Western Conference, so other teams better watch out. That's what we learned last season.
I love this Jazz team so much, but they're so one-sided. They are a very good defensive team, but offensively, they've got like one or two players that's going to help out tremendously. But I really like this team. I like their depth. I like Quinn Snyder. They beat the Oklahoma City Thunder in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs last year. And a lot of people were surprised. But, I mean, when you've got Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, and Joe Ingles, I mean, can't forget about Joe Ingles.
If Jack was here, he'd be very happy you mentioned him.
I mean, they're a good team.
I mean, Joe Ingles tortured Paul George in that first round series.
And he had a little smack to talk to.
Yeah, he was backing it up. I mean, this Jazz team is it's really functional. They have a really good system in place. As you mentioned, Jorge, Quinn Snyder is doing a tremendous job in Utah. This was the second best defensive rating team in the NBA last season. They just get it done on that side of the court. And obviously Gobert missed time, which kind of hurt them. But then I don't know if he would have gotten the same Donovan Mitchell if they didn't lose Gobert, if Mitchell didn't have to have that offense thrusted on his shoulders, because he was tremendous. I know I had him as my rookie of the year. Some people would disagree, but I just think his impact was huge last season. And now with another year under his belt, it would have helped if they had been able to add some kind of starter or scoring threat alongside of him, because this team at times can get, their offense can just go away. They can hit those kind of droughts. But defensively, they're always going to be in games. And I think Alec Burks, too, last year really impressed.
Talking about the Jazz from last year, highlight of last season for you guys.
Well, I'm really between two. I think it's either trading for Donovan Mitchell, which was, of course, before the start of the season. Actually, Mason, one of the writers in OTG, had a great article on why the Nuggets trading for Mitchell was a great move. But it was either trading for Mitchell or their post All-Star break performance. They won 75% of the games. They started moving the ball, making more shots, and they played perhaps their best defense all season. So I think it's one of those two.
Joe Ingles against Paul George. I mean, that series alone was amazing. I'm just going to say, Joe Ingles in the final 4 games of that series averaged 17, 4, and 4.
Impressive.
So the numbers speak for themselves. That's all I got to say.
I mean, for me, it's Donovan Mitchell. it could be any of the dunks that he had. I think the one putback dunk he had against the Lakers sticks out the most. But he was just so much fun to watch last year, and I'm looking forward to year 2.
Yeah, I think Donovan Mitchell is, obviously a highlight. I will shout out Ricky Rubio, who had a really nice season, improved as a shooter, and obviously his impact was felt being absent in that Houston Rockets series. But on a negative note, biggest disappointment of last year?
I'd have to say Rudy Gobert's injury. I mean, he missed 26 games. The Jazz lost 15 of them, and they were just down their defensive anchor. And as we saw later, the eventual defensive player of the year. So losing Gobert to injury was a very big hit, and it's really disappointing that the Jazz couldn't get a full season of Gobert. Maybe they would have, had a much better record. Who knows? So that's it for me.
For me, it's got to be Rodney Hood. I mean, he wasn't horrible for the Utah Jazz. He was just very, very inconsistent. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell took away some of the scoring opportunity for him, but Rodney Hood was just dreadful towards the end of his tenure in Utah. And trading him to Cleveland just kind of solidified that. He just signed his qualifying offer a couple of weeks ago. So Rodney Hood was definitely a big disappointment, and especially from a guy who was really, I guess, one of the biggest, most improved player candidates just a year ago.
For me, it's Dante Exum. Sorry, I almost messed up that name. I got it right. Him to only being able to play in 14 games, obviously missed most of the season due to an injury. A guy who they're really high on. They're still kind of looking for the point guard who can give them more offense. Obviously, Ricky Rubio was tremendous last year, but he still isn't a consistent offensive threat. And Exum's been this guy that everyone's hoping to see, and he just keeps getting banged up and missing time.
Yeah, I think Exum definitely showed some nice flashes last year in the playoffs, but it would be nice to see him healthy for a full season. I think missing Rubio in the playoffs at that time obviously hurt them. I don't think they would have won the series, but I like the point that Dylan brought up. Rodney Hood going to the season, there was a lot of hype around him, and then ending up trading him to Cleveland. It kind of says a lot about what happened with the season. But moving on from there, looking at this year's rankings, we got the Utah Jazz at number 6 in the OTG Power Rankings created by you guys. What are your thoughts on number 6 for the Jazz?
Well, I agree. To me, 6 is perfect because the way I see it, the Jazz are still not still, but they're the third team, the third best team in the Western Conference. I think I mentioned this also in the I wrote the team preview for the Utah Jazz, also up on OTG, and that's pretty much the idea. I think they're only behind the Rockets and the Warriors, obviously. So 6 works perfect for me.
Defense doesn't lie. And I think they're better than the Houston Rockets as of right now, just as a team. I think their bench unit is better. I think their starting lineup is more sound defensively. I just think they're overall a better team. And I'd probably have them 4th, just behind the Golden State Warriors, Boston Celtics, and Toronto Raptors. So I think it's just a little bit low. I mean, I'm obviously very, very high on the Utah Jazz, but I think it's a good ranking. I think it's higher than most outlets have them, but I would have them just a little bit higher.
I think it's fair. I think you can make the argument they're better than the Sixers, but I think 6 is right on the money. I think they have to be one spot higher than the Thunder, only because they just got done, pretty much destroying them that first round, besides the one big comeback and the other win. So I think 6 is fair. I could see them surpassing the Rockets at some point in time this season. I'm obviously a big fan of the Utah Jazz defensively. Defense wins championships.
Yeah, I think 6 is fair for now, but like you guys mentioned, maybe a spot up, maybe a spot down, depending on where you look. But I think one positive thing for the Jazz over the last couple seasons has been internal development, and that's something we'll probably see again this year with Donovan Mitchell, Dante Exum taking a step, and even Gobert maybe improving a little bit. But talking about this year's additions, we got the draft expert on here, Dylan Jackson, Grayson Allen, 21 overall, could be a solid role player, is known for being annoying and some dirty plays in college. What are your thoughts on selecting Allen?
Dylan, would you like to go first here? You're the draft master, so go ahead on this one. Take this one, please.
Allen, he should not have gone this high. I will say that. I had a early 2nd round grade on him. I think he probably was going to last until the 2nd round. Obviously, I went on the Nets podcast for Nick, and we talked a little bit about him and how he could be one of the guys that gets picked a little bit earlier just because of his skill set, and obviously that actually happened. So I'm actually a pretty I'm pretty skeptical of this pick. I think there were better options. I think Okogie could have been better. Although, actually, I'm not sure if Okogie went 18 or 22, but I'm pretty sure he was available. Kite Debates Diapa is another guy, D'Anthony Melton. There were just so many other guys available at this point. Like Kyrie Thomas is a guy who fits the exact mold that they're probably going to ask of Grayson Allen. It's just like people and scouts specifically tend to overrate combine performances. And since Allen had a 40-some inch vertical, I think that's one of the reasons he got picked this high. Again, it can be because of consistency in college. He was really good from the three-point line and just an all-around offensive threat. But I think this was a huge reach by the Utah Jazz. But I mean, Quinn Snyder is a great head coach, and I'm sure he'll find some way to utilize him. I just think that backcourt is really loaded with Donovan Mitchell, Ricky Rubio. Who else do they have? Alec Burks and Dante Exum. I think it's going to be hard for Grayson Allen to find minutes, and it wasn't necessarily at a position of need, especially with Jonas Jerebko leaving. I mean, I'm just not a huge fan of the fit.
Well, I don't really follow college basketball nearly as much as I do NBA basketball, but he spent 4 years at Duke. He's got to be a bit more mature than other rookies. However, he's had some couple of issues in the past in there. He gets out of control, but he looks like he has experience. As Dylan was mentioning, he was solid from the 3-point line. He shot, I think, 38% in college, and just all around, he looks good. He also, can move the ball. And as long as he's efficient, he might find himself playing a couple more minutes than some people expect this year.
All right, so I actually think Grayson Allen, even though he was taken way too high, is a decent pick for this team. Obviously, he's a guy who can score from the three-point line. He can drive. How he manages to be strength-wise versus other NBA players, kind of yet to be seen. But I think he can be the guy who comes off the bench, maybe only for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but he can be, a little bit of an offensive threat off that second unit. Somebody who just put pressure on a defense, which they kind of have been lacking on the second unit. So although I do think it was kind of a reach, I think he kind of fits into their system decently well for what they're kind of looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I can see what Dylan said. I think he definitely was a reach take him at this point, but maybe they're just looking for someone who's developed and they think can have an impact. Do you guys think that he'll have an impact this season, or he won't really see any minutes?
He's not going to see any minutes. I mean, that Utah Jazz team is really going to want to make the playoffs, and Grayson Allen, I mean, he's not good defensively. I'm just going to say that. He's athletic. He's got some potential, but there were other guys on the board. I'm just going to name off a couple here. Chandler Hutchison, Fernie Simons has more potential. Robert Williams was still available. They need that power forward, that bench power forward role. Amari Spellman, same kind of guy. Eliakobo, I think, was a better guard. Javon Carter is another guy. I think he could play minutes right away. I don't really see it with Grayson Allen.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll struggle getting minutes with, Exum, who's also their Burks, and maybe you could even count Cephalosha as a shooting guard, maybe. So yeah, the Jazz have a pretty stacked backcourt.
I'm just going to name one more guy that I think really should have been picked here instead of Grayson Allen, and that's Kyrie Thomas. He ended up going 38th to Detroit, but he's a guy I think could get some minutes right away. When he's on fire, he can just straight up make any shot possible. It's like Steph Curry almost.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't think he'll play to start the year. But if an injury comes up, which has kind of been the case for this Utah Jazz team in the past, I think he could earn a rotational spot and solidify himself in a spot. If someone was to go down, he was to get the opportunity. I actually think he could be a factor this season. Maybe not a huge one, but a small one.
Yeah, also, and sorry. As you guys were mentioning before, the Jazz have done a pretty good job, developing their picks, their draft picks. So maybe we don't see much of him this season, but maybe 2-3 seasons from now, he'll be a starter. Who knows? But I think he has a chance.
I just think on a team full of one-way players like Donovan Mitchell, Ricky Rubio is not good defensively, and like that whole front court is basically all defense. I think they really could have used a two-way guy here instead of some offensive-minded guard again.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's a very good point. But moving on to free agency, obviously this is one of the teams that actually didn't sign a new free agent. They signed some undrafted guys, but nobody substantial. More so in the re-signing department. Exum re-signed for a 3 years, 30 mil and change. Derek Favors 2 years, 33 mil. Second year, partially guaranteed, I believe, almost non-guaranteed. And then they kept Neto as well. Thoughts on re-signing their own?
Well, I think they did what they had to do. I mean, they didn't really have to go look out for extra help. Maybe perhaps they could have done something about losing Jerebko. As Dylan was mentioning, maybe looking for some help at the power forward because they're as I mentioned earlier, the Jazz are quite stacked on the backcourt, but their front court, especially the big man positions, they're kind of thin on that department. So they could have gone they could have gotten somebody who could have helped there. But other than that, they did their job, which was bringing back the same players, the same core they had last season. They were successful. So they did everything right, other than missing out on a potential big man. But everything else, I mean, there's not too much to criticize.
Yeah, I love the Dante Exum re-signing. You give him another chance. I believe he's only 22 years old. He's really good on defense, working on that three-point shot. I think that's a really good signing, and hopefully he can come off the bench and possibly after Rubio leaves after this year. I mean, he's a free agent. We don't know if he's going to leave, but it looks likely. Then Dante Exum can step into that starting spot and play right away. Derek Favors, he can play that small ball five. I think he really fits that better rather than starting power forward because I mean, when you're starting Favors and Gobert and at the same time, it doesn't really create a lot of spacing, and that can create some problems. And of course, they got the backup center for 2 more years. So all in all, they did a really good job maintaining their players, except for Jerebko. And I'm really interested to see how they end up using power forwards off the bench.
Yeah, Exum was a good re-signing. He's 22 years old. Why not give him a chance, see if he can stay healthy? He could be the point guard for the future. I wasn't a giant fan of the Derek Favors contract. I thought $17 million was kind of steep. I wasn't aware until now that the second year was almost not guaranteed at all. That makes it slightly better. But again, it's okay bringing back Favors because Gobert has been banged up the last couple of years, and Favors has really stepped up into that big small ball five starting center when Gobert goes down. And although those two are kind of unplayable because they're too slow together and they don't give you enough spacing, they can be utilized significantly when they're off the court at different times.
Yeah, there's also been a lot of talk about Derek Favors adding a three-point shot. And one thing, his contract definitely isn't amazing, but I think it makes it a variable tradable contract if you're looking at a team who's looking to clean up like cap books, like hypothetically, let's say he was moved to Cleveland and they're looking to get some cap off the books, moving Kevin Love or something back to Utah. Now they could just kind of waive that contract because the second year is non-guaranteed. And like you guys said about Exum, I thought he showed a lot in the playoffs. I remember a couple of defensive sequences against James Harden where he really showed some potential, and I'd like to see what he can do if he can stay healthy. But any thoughts on the departures? Obviously, Jonas Jerebko is the only significant one. Any thoughts on losing him? Obviously, they waived him, so it was by choice.
Well, I mean, Jerebko received a couple of meaningful minutes off the bench last season. Actually, 15 minutes, about 15 minutes per game. And he shot over 41% from 3 on 2.1 attempts, which is pretty impressive for a bench guy. I mean, obviously, he doesn't do much else, but he was pretty helpful at spacing the floor as Kory and Dylan were mentioning. When you're starting Favors and Gobert, there's not too much spacing on the court. So, Jerebko could always be that guy who Quinn Snyder plugged in, and, he would just be an instant threat from behind the arc. So I think he's kind of not a big loss, but meaningful.
Yeah, he's just a quality guy off the bench that really any team could use, just like that stretch big type role. Nothing too major. I mean, he's not a starting caliber player or anything, but I think the one thing that they might miss is just some depth at the power forward position, because right now you've got Jay Crowder, Joe Ingles, and just a couple big guys that I'm not too sure could play the power forward position. I mean, especially when most power forwards today can shoot the 3 ball. So I'm interested to see how it can play out.
Yeah, they're going to miss the ability to have someone who can score at the 4, but it's a role player, and hopefully one of these younger guys steps up.
Yeah,
They're
I
gonna play
think
small anyways too.
they'll be able to replace him. I think Jay Crowder really impressed last year. Also, Rice O'Neal's a guy I really like on the Jazz. Talking starters, though, who do you have for opening night for the Jazz?
I don't think they'll make any changes. The starting lineup will most probably be Rubio, Mitchell, Ingles, Favors, and Gobert.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much set in stone. Rubio, Mitchell, Ingles, Favors, or Gobert. Those are the guys I think are gonna start. But if I had to choose a starting lineup myself, I would probably go Rubio, Mitchell, Ingles, Crowder, and Gobert, just to have some more spacing on the floor.
Yeah, I have the same starting lineup as you guys, and as well, Dylan. I would prefer to go small right away and have Favors be the backup center and have Crowder start the small four.
Yeah,
But do you think Favors would accept a bench role like right away?
I think
You
what
don't
they'll
know.
do is they could kind of work it in rotation wise, where technically he starts, but he's spending more time with the second unit, and then they bring somebody else off the bench very quickly, the first stoppage or something like that.
Yeah,
And we
right.
keep Gobert fresh too if you did that.
Yeah, that what Nick was saying was kind of what I figure out they should start doing more of. And as you were also mentioning, he was pretty good at center. He did a pretty good job of just keeping the Jazz kind of afloat while Gobert was gone. So it should be interesting to see him take a couple of minutes as a center with the second unit, and also provide some extra scoring. He can do some work down low on the post. So hopefully he'll be helpful in that area.
And he's another guy that obviously needs to stay healthy because Favors has dealt with injuries. He's been able to play through them a little bit, but I think having a full offseason should really benefit him. Talking breakout starters for the Jazz, who do you have?
Well, I mean, Mitchell would be the right answer. But I know I just expect Favors to do something else. You mentioned earlier there were leaks and reports of him adding a 3-point shot, whatever. We hear a lot of players who get 3-point shots from one season to another over the summer. It just happened, and I I'm not really relying on that, but more on the fact that um y- uh the Jazz are a defensive team and they need someone on offense, and Favors can do a good job on offense close to the basket, even from within the mid-range area. He can do some damage, using a couple of post moves. And on defense, he should improve. We saw the Jazz's defense last season, and it's hard to think that they could improve on that. But they should improve, and they need to improve if they want to have a chance at doing something impactful in the playoffs. So I expect Favors to take a jump.
I've got two players here. I've got Dante Exum and Alec Burks, and it really just depends on what they want to do with Donovan Mitchell versus Ricky Rubio. For instance, if Ricky Rubio turns out to underperform and Dante Exum overperforms, then what they might do is just move Dante Exum up to the starting point guard spot and bring Rubio off the bench. Another thing I could see them doing is actually Donovan Mitchell played more minutes at point guard than shooting guard last year. So what they could do is they could just slide him up to point guard and put Alec Burks in at the 2. Those are really the only two things I could see, just like starting lineup wise. But I mean, other than that, I already mentioned Jay Crowder at the 4 and just bringing Favors off the bench as a small ball 5. I mean, other than that, I can't really see anything changing.
My breakout starter is Gobert. I just think it's about health. If he stays healthy for a full year, I'm ready for him to win Defensive Player of the Year and be, probably the most dominant center in the league defensively. Last year he only averaged like 13.8 points per game. I think he can be used more offensively if he's healthy. I know they probably just didn't want to push him last year and feed him the ball. Obviously, he's never averaged under 2 blocks per game since he became a starter. He's a decent rebounder. So I think he can get better because he has that crazy length. So for me, it's Rudy Gobert.
Gobert is definitely a good pick, repeat as Defensive Player of the Year. And then obviously, I think Donovan Mitchell, he had a ton of success last year as a rookie, but I think there's plenty of things he'll learn. And obviously, all the relationships he has in the league, talking to a lot of stars and whatnot, should only benefit him. And he can improve defensively, put a little bit more effort on that side of the ball. But breakout bench player.
Well, Dylan just mentioned Exum and Burks, who were my 2 picks, but I think it would be a better fit to keep both Exum and Burks on the bench, especially when you have a starting lineup that is really good defensively, but as we've mentioned throughout the podcast, offensively the offense could get stagnant at times. So having both Exum and Burks coming off the bench would be really helpful on that area. They could have just mixed lineups and play around with that. But I think Exum should take the biggest jump as far as bench players are concerned. He should be better scoring wise. He's long for the point guard position. He's shown flashes of greatness. As Nick also mentioned earlier, he was pretty good on that Rocket series. He held his own against the MVP. And I think he could just be better on both ends. He had a full summer to work out, so let's see what he can do.
Tony Bradley was the 30th overall pick in the 2017 NBA draft. And I don't think they picked him there for nothing. So I think he's going to take a step up this year and maybe play some backup minutes at 5. But other than that, I really already mentioned Alec Burks. I mentioned Dante Exum, Jay Crowder. So they have a really sound defensive bench unit, and I'm really interested to see how it works out.
Yeah, my breakout bench player is going to be Exum. I think he's going to be healthy this year for once. I think we're going to be able to see him play the 6-man kind of minutes and be a big part of that, just kind of spark plug off the bench. I think he'll even be possibly in the running for most improved if he can stay healthy. For me, it's Exum.
Yeah, I like him as well. You guys already really talked about Dante Exum taking a jump, and like I said, defensively, like Kory pointed out, I think offensively there's still plenty of skill there, improving the jump shot. But like I mentioned before, I like Royce O'Neal was another guy that kind of stepped up for them last year with injuries. I think he's a real tough dude that they can bring off the bench, can play a little bit of 3 and 4. But getting into the season predictions, best case scenario for the Jazz next year if everything were to go right.
Well, I think the best case scenario is still a number 3 seed. Of course, having the best defense in the league. I don't think they can get past the Rockets. We saw the Rockets lose a couple of key defenders, but I still don't think the Rockets will take a step down. So I think the best case scenario, the Jazz just build a lot of momentum and have the best defense in the league and are a dominant 3rd seed, because we saw the Blazers be the 3 seed last season and just get swept. I think the difference between the 3rd and 8th seed was like 3 wins. So the Jazz have a chance to establish themselves as a threat from the 3 seed, in my opinion.
I think their ceiling is 60-22 is the 2nd seed.
Oh,
now, I am very, very high on the Utah Jazz. I'm very high on the Utah Jazz. They're the best defensive team in the NBA. They're going to have Rudy Gobert for a full season. That bench unit is not bad at all. And, I mean, Ricky Rubio was good last year. Jay Crowder was good last year. Derek Favors took a step up. And Joe Ingles is Joe Ingles. So I think they could finish 60-22 at their absolute highest. It's just a quality group of starters and 2 stars, as well as a really good, sound defensive bench unit. If they are able to add maybe a stretch 4 off the bench, I think they could really be something else.
I'm not that high on the Utah Jazz. I'm also Jazz. I think best case scenario for the Jazz would be 55 wins. And that could still be a 2 seed in the West, depending on how things shake out. But I think that at least guarantees them a 3 seed.
Yeah, I got 56 or 57 wins in best case scenario, and that's if Gobert stays healthy, because I think last year when he was healthy, they were a really dominant team defensively, like Dylan pointed out. I think they could get the 2 seed if Houston maybe were banged up. I think Houston will probably be a little bit better than people think. I know they've lost pieces, but last year when Chris Paul, James Harden, and Capella were all playing together, they had an insane record. Do you guys think they can get to the Western Conference Finals?
Yes.
Jorge?
Yes, I think they have a chance if and only if they are the number 3 or 2 seed. Because if they're 4, or in whichever case they face the Warriors, they should be gone. But if they get the Rockets or whoever is a 2 3 seed, however that works, as long as the Jazz can avoid the Warriors until the Western Conference Finals, they have a legit shot.
Yeah, I think they have a for sure chance of making it to the Western Conference Finals if everything shakes out how, or at least projecting it to be.
Yeah, I think pretty much what Jorge said, depending on the matchups. And that goes for a lot of Western Conference teams. Whoever you get in that second round is going to kind of determine how far you go and who you match up with, who's healthy at that time. Now, a negative note, worst case scenario for the Jazz next year, if everything were to go bad, injuries and whatnot.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we're talking worst case scenario, I think the main issue would have to be injuries. Of course, more injuries to Gobert, more injuries to Favors, and even Exum coming off the bench. And I mean, I hope nothing bad happens to Donovan Mitchell, but that him going down would also take a big offensive source, if we want to call it this way, away from the Jazz, but even on the worst case scenario, I think they still make the playoffs. Worst case scenario, like talking super bad luck and everything, I think they're an 8th seed if everything goes like super bad. They're deep and they have a very capable defense, even without a couple of their starters, and they're just too good to have them out of the playoffs, even if everything goes super bad.
This team certainly isn't worse than they were last year, and like Jorge said, I think the only way they do get worse is by injury. Rudy Gobert hasn't had the best injury history, and Donovan Mitchell has been kind of spotty throughout college. So if some of that returns to him through this year, then maybe, just maybe, the Utah Jazz don't make the playoffs, but I've got their floor being 48-34 as like the 6th seed in the Western Conference. So I think that's the absolute lowest they get. They're just way too good defensively. Even if Gobert does get hurt, they've still got Derek Favors, who, I mean, he's a really good defensive center as well. So I'm just really excited to see this Utah Jazz team play.
Yeah, my worst case scenario is 48 wins and somewhere between the 6 and 9 seed in the West, because I still don't know what the odd man out team is going to be. It could be 2 teams that have fairly good records and just miss out. So I think there's somewhere between that 6 and 8 seed range with 48 wins.
Yeah, I think 48, 47 wins if everything were to go bad. Gobert were to miss a lot of time and maybe just miss out on the playoffs if, things were really to go ugly. But I think they're in pretty good shape long as no one misses the entire season. Now, actual prediction for the Jazz next year, what are you thinking?
I think they win 52 games. Like, we're talking a realistic prediction. I think that they're winning 52, maybe 53, 54-ish at most. Taking everything into account, they should also be ahead of the OKC Thunder on the division battle thing. Unless the Thunder take a very big leap, the Jazz should still be above them. So yeah, maybe 53 wins should make it.
I have them as the 2nd seed in the Western Conference. I've got them finishing 58-24, which, for what it's worth, is better than the Houston Rockets. I don't think the Oklahoma City Thunder are good enough just in that tough Western Conference to make the playoffs. So I think they're better than them. I think they're better than the Nuggets. I think they're better than the Pelicans and Lakers. So I'm a huge fan of this Utah Jazz team. And because of their depth as well as their just defensive prowess as a whole unit, they're going to be very, very good. And I think they will end up being better than the Houston Rockets.
Man, I think you're sipping some Kool-Aid.
Right.
No, I think this is a 52-win team on the year. I think they finished somewhere between the 2 and 4 seed. I think this is a home court team in the playoffs, but I'm not positive I can lock in the seeding yet for 2 through 4, but they're somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think about 53 wins actual prediction and somewhere between the 3 and 4 seed getting home court, but I don't think they'll get up to the 2nd seed unless something were to go wrong in Houston. I think this team will improve and definitely be someone you don't want to face in the playoffs. Now, talking about that, which teams in the Western Conference playoff-wise do you think they match up against the best?
Well, obviously, the Rockets would be another fun matchup to see how both teams go at it each other a year after the Rockets knocked them out in 5 games, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
5 games.
So of course the Rockets would present the most exciting matchup. If we're talking the Warriors, I think that's just too much, especially if we're considering a healthy DeMarcus Cousins and everything going good for them. But I think even the Thunder could give him a battle. This year it was. I don't know. It's just everything fell apart in OKC from Carmelo to lack of defense sometimes. Andre Robertson going down. All of that just played a role in OKC looking worse than they actually were. But I think OKC could also give them a tough battle in the playoffs.
I think that the Denver Nuggets versus the Utah Jazz would be the most fun series to watch throughout the playoffs. That's like
Opposites.
all offense versus all defense. That would be, you've got, that would just be, like Isaiah Thomas versus Dante Exum. It would just be a super fun series, just all the matchups, like Gary Harris, Donovan Mitchell, Nikola Jokic versus Rudy Gobert. There's just a ton of matchups in that game.
This team I don't think this team matches up well with the Warriors or the Rockets. I think there's just too much offense from both those teams, especially when the ball's moving. But I think this team matches up against any of the other teams decently well. The Pelicans, the Thunder, the Nuggets. I think the Lakers are interesting only because there's really no one who can guard LeBron James. I guess it'd be fun seeing Ingles and Crowder do a back and forth with Sevolosha as a nuisance. But I think this Jazz team matches up really well against every team besides those two teams that kind of run the West right now.
Now, moving on to the important question of the show, emoji that represents the Jazz for you.
That like palm hand that's right there? Well, that's Gobert hands rejecting everything that comes near the basket.
I like that.
So, yeah, I think that should be it.
Jorge's was a lot more creative than mine. You guys know, like the stock chart thing where you've got the line going up or the line going down. Well, I've got them with the line going up, like the red line moving up the graph, because that team is young. They're only going to get better. That bench unit is good. It's sound. So yeah, that's the emoji I would use to describe.
You're certainly high on them. So
you're buying stock. You're buying stock.
The stock is up.
The stock is up. My emoji, I think I've used this before, is the emoji with the shush.
That's unacceptable. You can't use the same emoji.
I was actually going to ask you before the show if that's a rule because we haven't crossed that problem yet. But this is another one of those teams I think it flies underneath the radar. Even last season, they were kind of slept on. I think this year is going to be no different. No one really pays attention to Utah. It's just how it goes. Salt Lake City doesn't get that much love. But I think this team will, again, be a top 5 defensive team. Hopefully the offense gets slightly better and they're just going to be slept on. And they're going to be a team that no one wants to face come playoff time.
I got the handshake emoji because this team plays team basketball. They're a good team unit, like Dylan's pointed out. I think they play team defense, team offense. When the ball gets moving, that's when they're successful. So that's it for me. I got a couple questions for you guys before we get into league pass rating, though. Do you guys think Donovan Mitchell will have a shot at making the All-Star team this year?
If you're asking me, not a chance. The West is stacked. Now, with LeBron coming, DeMar DeRozan coming, who, by the way, I also think will not make the All-Star team. But, there's just too many guys. The guards, you have Westbrook, Paul, Curry. We know the drill of Westbrook, everyone. So I don't think as good as Mitchell plays, unless like he completely just goes off and scores 28 or something, I don't think he has a chance.
Now, I am a huge fan of Donovan Mitchell, but no, not at all. I can't see it at all. He's in the Western Conference. He plays in the city of, not the city, he plays in the state of Utah, and there's not many people there, so he's not going to get the fan vote. He's not going to get the media vote, and he's not going to get the coaches vote. So there's absolutely no way he gets in the All-Star game.
All right,
it's your guy, Kory.
Yeah, I know it's my guy, Nick. Thanks. So this is the case I can make for him to be an All-Star. If he plays pretty much like he did last year, maybe even a couple notches above it, this team is healthy and successful going into the All-Star weekend, I think it bolsters his case to be an All-Star. However, if this team is in the middle of the West, he's not having a crazy year or the same kind of success, and they're not winning as many games, then I think it's going to hurt his All-Star case. I think this team has to be coming out of the gates running. If they're, for example,
Dylan's best case scenario.
right, if he's winning, 58 wins? Was it 58 wins,
60,
Dylan?
right?
I had them at 60 wins for the best case.
Okay, for example, so if they're on pace to have 60 wins, that means Donovan Mitchell's probably balling his ass off. So if they're playing with that much success and they're winning that many games, I think Mitchell is an all-star. If they're just middle of the pack, I don't think he makes it. It's going to be based on how the team does.
I just want to point out that the whole city of Charlotte would be so salty if Donovan Mitchell made the All-Star game.
Yeah, I could understand that.
No, but
you mentioned the Denver and the Jazz matchup. Imagine if they won that series and Donovan Mitchell had a huge series. I think the fans would be super upset in Denver.
Yeah, that's true, especially if Lyles didn't play at all. So
yeah, well, Tyler Lydon probably isn't going to see minutes either in that series, so that just kind of puts some more salt in the wound.
He hasn't even seen minutes his career yet.
Yeah.
So
I think he dealt with an injury last year. He's actually from Kory's hometown. Yeah,
he had a torn ACL. So he didn't play much last year, and I really don't expect him to play much this year either.
He'll get out there.
But guys, do you think there's any big name trade targets the Jazz could go for? We mentioned adding maybe a stretch four, another offensive type player, and obviously, some teams are going to have a decline this season. Do you think they could swoop in and make a move for somebody?
Wait, guys, pause. Before you, just hypothetical. What if they get Jimmy Butler?
No,
don't start.
Maybe in the offseason. No, not okay, fine, not a trade, but in the offseason. All right, go back to the trade.
Right.
Back to the trade.
We're talking trades right now.
Yeah, I think Jimmy Butler just doesn't really have an interest in re-signing in Utah, so that kind of hurts that idea. But any trade targets you have in mind for the Jazz?
I mean, whichever stretch four really, I don't think they really need to try and make any trades unless they really notice that that Jerebko, they really start missing Jerebko. I don't think they should try and trade for anyone unless they really need someone that spaces the floor. But I mean, then again, you could always plug, I don't know, maybe Jay Crowder at the four or somebody who can shoot threes and solve that problem. So yeah, I don't really see them making a big trade unless something goes bad.
Y'all are really gonna make me say it, aren't you?
All right.
What are you gonna say?
Kemba Walker.
I had a feeling.
No,
I thought you were gonna say Kemba or Kevin Love because Jack's brought that up too before.
I said Kemba Walker and Frank Kaminsky. They'd probably send, I don't know, young picks or players or something. I don't know what the return package would be. I'd have to take
with Exum back?
trade machine, but I'm not sure. They probably have to get a third team involved. As Charlotte just doesn't want to trade Walker for chips, but hey, if they want Frank Kaminsky, I would pay them to take him. So for what it's worth. I think Frank Kaminsky could be a realistic target.
Any targets for you, Kory?
Nah.
Nothing?
No, I can't see any. I really can't.
I could see them making more of a role player type move. I don't know if they'd make a splash type move. They just seem to really believe in internally of what they're doing. And, contract wise is always a concern re-signing somebody. But getting back to
who'd be a nice fit, actually? No, just thought of it. A Courtney Lee or a Damari Carroll.
Yeah, definitely give them some more depth too. League pass wise, though, guys, where do they stand 1 through 10?
I'd say maybe an 8.5, 9-ish. Just because they're super fun to watch play, especially when you watch them play defense. And I think I mentioned this in another podcast before, but it was really funny in that Rockets Jazz series to see James Harden and Chris Paul. There was a stretch in which they were literally afraid of getting even a couple of feet close from Rudy Gobert, because I don't know, he just has a lot of the opposite of gravity. He repels everything away from the basket. Not everything, but everyone. It's just so fun to watch him play defense, and if they move the ball, then they can just create some more disaster on offense. So I'd give them a fair 8.5.
Wait, you actually like watching defense?
I'm all in on defense.
I mean, I've been talking about defense this whole podcast, but I gotta give them a 1. They're
Oh, God.
One?
I do not like watching this team besides Donovan Mitchell.
I did not expect that.
Wait,
All
so
right,
you
gotta
telling
go.
me you don't enjoy what
I'm going through a tunnel.
the Boston Celtics last
wild.
season? They were like super fun to watch because all the switching, all the mobility. I don't know. It's just I really enjoy watching that.
I
give a team
mean,
58
I would
wins
much rather
and then
watch
say
the
they're
Nuggets
one.
than the. I mean, I would much rather watch the Nuggets than the Jazz. I want to see teams put up 140 points, not 70. I mean, that's just who I am. But
I think that's fair, to be honest. I mean, I wouldn't probably give them a 1, but I can understand the perspective of you rather watch offense and
That
defense.
still
Like,
makes sense.
what do you got, Kory?
I have an 8.5. I think this team.
Really?
I mean, I'm a big fan of defensive teams in general. I mean, I guess I just like I like those gritty games. I don't know. The Pacers team I was a fan of, just 5 years ago, they played that kind of gritty basketball. So I don't mind the slower tempo. I'm a big fan of Donovan Mitchell. I think Rudy Gobert's really fun to watch defensively when he's healthy. So I still think this team has watchability. And if they're going to win close to 58 games, I think that's still pretty exciting to see a team that's probably going to have some sort of win streak along the way this season.
you guys are weird.
I have a 6.5. I think they are more like they're above average watch because of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and I think Ricky Rubio has still throw some nasty passes. I think obviously some games are not going to be fun, but there's going to be certain matchups where I think you're going to want to watch, especially when they match up against some of like the more offensive minded teams, like you mentioned, Dylan. Like when they go against the Nuggets, it's like who's going to win, the offense or the defense? So I think like a 6.5, maybe even a 7, depending if they get hot offensively. Then obviously you got the Joe Ingles trash talk. But what TV show would you watch over the Jazz?
I don't really watch a lot of TV, but I remember watching Modern Family a couple of years ago, having a couple of laughs with that show. So I think I would watch the Jazz over Modern Family just because I personally enjoy watching defense, as weird as that sounds, especially because defense most always like it always creates offense when you play good defense. So that's why I find it exciting.
I have watched, I'd say, 3 television series in the past year. So I mean, I'm just gonna preface this by saying that. But I'd probably say Parks and Recreation because I mean, before this podcast, I promised Nick that I wouldn't say The Office again. So I gotta go with my other old reliable in Parks and Recreation.
Good choice.
Those 30-minute TV shows are clutch. For me, I'm going with Sons of Anarchy. It was an FX show about a biker gang. I like mobster stuff and biker and gang stuff. It's entertaining to me, and that was one of the
guys. I'm gonna go with somewhat of a poor acting show, but a good plot related to comics. I'm gonna go with Arrow. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but Jazz aren't super high on my league pass rating. Arrow's not super high on my list either, but I think it kind of balances out. Any last thoughts you want to get in about the Jazz? I know you got some hot takes in there, Dylan and Jorge.
Yes. Ricky Rubio is just a better version of Milos Teodosic.
Ooh.
Way to go in the last name, bud.
He's European and everything.
Yeah. Passer, not great defensively.
Both are Spanish, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Or no?
I think they are, actually, yeah.
Both should be Spanish, if I'm not mistaken. They even kind of look alike, with the beard.
The older version of Ricky Rubio.
I don't really have any other thoughts.
No other hot takes, Jorge? Come on, I know you got something.
I mean, after hearing Dylan say the Jazz would be a 2 seed above the Rockets, I don't think I have anything on my bag that could.
Come on, you gotta have something.
I mean,
anything from you, Kory?
I pull out all the hot takes for you.
I think Rudy Gobert finishes top 5 and most improved defensive player of the year. I don't know if he wins either.
Yeah,
well, he won Defensive Player of the Year last year, so I mean, repeating is hard, but I wouldn't be opposed to it just because he was so dominant defensively.
I low-key want Kawhi to win it, though. I just think it'd be fun. He comes back, he's just like, hey, guys, I'm still here.
It'd be crazy. Kawhi's in the MVP contention, wins Defensive Player of the Year too. That would be a hell of a season. And obviously, Spurs fans aren't listening to this podcast, and thankfully so. But that wraps up for me. I don't have any hot takes. As always, a pleasure, Dylan, Jorge, and Kory. Dylan and Jorge, tell them where they can find you on Twitter, and other than OTG, where they can find your work.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Cantu NBA. As you most probably know already, I love discussion. So any questions, anything, I usually post some couple late night questions, late night thoughts I get every now and then when I'm about to go to bed. So if you want to hop into that, you can. Also, I want to take the chance to plug the OTG Breakout Players series. I actually have a very interesting article coming up about Jakob Poeltl. You know, he was just traded from the Raptors to the Spurs. Maybe the article could be up by the time that this podcast is out, so watch out. And not only for that one, but for the rest of the series, we already have a couple of very good articles on Breakout Players out, so be on the lookout for them.
You can find me on Twitter at JacksonNBA, at JaxonNBA, because I like to spell it that way more than the regular way you spell Jackson.
I remember that from last time.
Yeah, I mean, I say it every time because people end up going to the other one, which is like some other analyst dude. So go to JaxonNBA instead of the other one. So yeah, that's all I got to say.
Look for ODG basketball in our bios.
Yes. Yeah, that one too. Yes.
As always, Kory, pleasure talking to you. And you check out Kory's Podflex, his hoops. I also do Brooklyn Buzz if you want to talk Nets. But as always, guys, thank you for listening. Check us out on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube.
Peace out.